Welcome to Creole and Cajun Living with Bomb Cherry. And in this video, I will be showing you how to make a New Orleans style shrimp po' boy. Part 1, I will be making a homemade French bread, and here are the items needed. The first thing I'm going to start with is proofing my yeast. So I'm going to start off with my water being warm, not too hot, and I'm going to add just a few sprinkles of sugar to it. Mix it up well, and then I'm going to add in my yeast. This is a very important step to ensure that your yeast is good. I set my timer for 10 minutes, and I allow it to sit aside and proof. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes, and as you can see, my yeast have bloomed. So what I'm going to do now is mix in all my dry ingredients. After making sure that all my dry ingredients have been blended very well, I'm then going to add in my yeast. Now I am using my stand mixer with a dough hook attachment. You don't want to place your speed no higher than 2 when using the dough hook attachment. And I set my timer for 8 minutes. Now 4 minutes into blending, which is half the time, I take a look at the dough. I realize it's not coming together. Right now, my dough looks a little bit too dry. The pieces aren't coming together, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is add in about a tablespoon of water to this. Now it's easier for me to add than it is for me to take away. And that's why I'm only using a few drops of water at a time. Now it's real tricky when dealing with other people's recipes when it pertains to flour. Your flour consistency, or should I say the swelling of the grains, will depend on things like your weather, the humidity in the air, and different things like that. So that's why I'm saying take a look at what my dough looked like and try to make sure yours look like mine in the end. Okay, so this is what you're looking for. You're looking for your dough to become one. No lumps, no clumps left anywhere. It starts pulling away from the bowl as if it's cleaning up its own mess. And you want it to look a little glossy as well. So there's a big difference in how it begun and where it is at this stage. And this is what you're looking for. As you can see, my timer has ended. It's been 8 minutes of kneading, and now we're going to go to the next step. Side note, if you don't have a stand mixer, but you do have a bread machine, set your bread machine to dough, follow the manufacturer's instructions. Otherwise, if you have neither one, you will have to knead your dough by hand. In the video clip above, I was kneading dough for pizza. So go check out my pizza dough recipe and see exactly how I did that. You know your dough is ready when you press and it springs back. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm going to set my dough aside for it to rise for a couple hours. I want to ensure that the dough doesn't stick to the container, so I oil both the container and lightly oil the dough itself. I cover it with saran wrap, and then I'm going to place a towel over it. Place it in an area where there's no drafts and no light, and allow it to rise for 2 hours. It should double in size. Okay, so it's been 2 hours, and as you can see, the dough has risen. It doubled in size, and now what I'm going to do is punch out the air. Okay, so now I'm going to shape my French bread. I lightly flour the surface to ensure that the dough doesn't stick to it. I am going to be making 3 loaves, so what I do is I try to evenly spread this dough out in order for me to cut the doughs and try to get them as even as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to shape my loaf. And what I'm doing here is I'm lightly pressing outwards with my hand. And if you like to, you can also use a rolling pin. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But you want to keep everything as even as you can. If you're using a rolling pin or a can or anything to press this out, make sure you add a little flour to whatever the surface of whatever you're using to ensure that it doesn't stick. Now, as you see what I'm doing now, I'm rolling and stretching at the same time. I'm rolling and tucking and stretching in order to make this loaf. You see, it starts out kind of small, but eventually what I'm doing, I'm using my hands and I'm pulling. I'm pulling lightly in order for it to get a little length on it. Here I'm going to do the second one. Okay, as you can see, when you're making your own items, whatever it is, it can be to your liking. They don't have to be perfect. You can make one shorter than the other, one larger than the other, as far as width. You can do it whatever it is that you prefer. Okay, and you can also use this dough to make hot dog buns and different type of rolls as well, but we'll talk about that during other videos. Okay, so what I'm going to be using is some parchment paper, wax paper. You can even use a towel if you like. Make sure to lightly flour whatever the item is. And what you're going to do is put a loaf, make a crease, put another loaf, make another crease, and put another loaf. If you have more loaves or less loaves, you get the point. The reasoning behind this is to make sure that as these loaves are proofing yet once again, that they maintain their shape. So I'm going to cover them up for about 30 minutes to an hour. It's been about 30 minutes, so I decided to preheat my oven to 375. I place one rack at the very bottom in the oven and the other rack at the very top in the oven. I then place this cast iron skillet on the very bottom in the oven. It's been an hour, and as you can see, the dough has risen yet once again. So at this point, I'm going to lightly spritz my dough with water. I then transport my dough to my baking pan. I make sure to put a slit down the middle, and that is to prevent cracking. At this point, I'm going to add my pan to the top rack, and I'm going to add some cold water to the skillet that was placed on the bottom rack to create steam. After 8 minutes, I respritz my loaves and I spritz the cast iron skillet once again with cold water. After 8 minutes, I repeat the steps once again. Spritz the loaves. I then turn them around for even baking. Give them another spritz. And then I spritz the cast iron skillet. Okay, so we're going to repeat this, but the difference is going to be we're going to do it every 3 minutes and we're going to do it 2 times. That should be a total of 22 minutes of baking time. And here is the end result. You end up with a French loaf that is warm, soft in the middle, and a little crunchy at the top. Make sure to stay tuned for part 2 of how to make a New Orleans style shrimp po' boy. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.